Assalamualaikum. My name is Dua Abbas and I am from the linguistics batch, and the topic that I would be presenting today is active and passive voice from key 14 from page number 243 till 251. First of all, I would let you people know that what is basically an active voice. We would be digging into the definition. So, when the subject of the sentence is the recipient of the verb's action, is known as the active voice. What does this mean? This means that when the subject is the doer of the action in a sentence, that action or that sentence is known as the active voice. For example, the boy ate the banana, right? So the sentence structure for this form of grammar is subject plus verb plus direct object. In this sentence, where is the emphasis? Yes, the emphasis is on the boy. Why? Because the boy is the doer of the action. What is the boy doing? The boy is eating the banana. Coming towards the passive voice, what is the passive voice? The passive voice is when the subject is the person or the thing acted on or affected by the verb's action. It means that whenever the object or the subject is affected by the verb's action, that is known as the passive voice. When we convert a sentence from active into passive, the subject is converted into object and the object is converted into the subject. And what changes? The form of the verb changes and the form of to be changes. What is that? That is the helping verb or the auxiliary verb. For example, the banana was eaten by the boy. Right? The sentence structure for this form of grammar is object, a form of be, past participle, subject. So, is the above sentence lying in this structure? Yes. The banana was eaten by the boy. Was is the a form of be. Eaten is the past participle. Subject is the boy and object is the banana. So in this sentence, where is the emphasis? Yes, the emphasis is on the banana. Why? Because the banana is the receiver of the action. Right? What is the thing that is eaten? Is the boy eaten? No, the boy is not eaten. The banana is eaten. Right? Another thing that I would like to mention over here is some verbs can never be used in passive voice. What are those verbs? Those verbs are the intransitive verbs. Why? Because they do not possess a direct object, so they cannot be changed into passive voice. For example, some of the examples of intransitive verbs are die, arrive, and depart. Always keep in mind whenever you find an intransitive verb that cannot be changed into passive voice. Now coming to word active and passive in different tenses. Keep one thing in mind, then whenever you are changing on or whenever you are working with the voices, every time the tense would be different and according to the tense the sentence would be converted. For example, in the present tense, the active voice is I clean my house every day. This is what? The present simple tense. When we will be converting it into the passive voice would be changed into past simple. My house is cleaned by me every day. Right? We would be using the past participle. Kindly ignore these problems. I'm sorry for that. Another tense is past. He ate that cookie. When we will be converting into passive voice, it would be that cookie was eaten by him. Right? We would be changing it according to the tense. In both the sentences, one thing that is in common is the third form of the verb. Whenever we are working with the voices, whenever we convert a sentence into passive voice, it would always be with the third form of the verb, and that is certain. You have to keep that in mind, that in the passive voice, always the third form of the verb is used. Moving towards the present progressive, they are doing a celebration. So what would be the passive voice? The celebration is being done by them. So what is the helping verb or the auxiliary verb or the form of be here? It is being. So in the present progressive, the helping verb would be being. In the past it would be was, and in the present it is. Moving towards present perfect, she has made the cake. In the passive voice it would be the cake has been made by her. So what is the form of be over here? It is been. Yes, correct. Moving towards models, the people should limit the use of plastic. So in the passive voice it would be the use of plastic should be limited by people. Right? So the form of be over here is be, and the third form of the verb is used. So this is active and passive in different tenses. Moving towards the other slide, which contains past participle plus preposition combination as adjectives. What is this? This is another important aspect that should be kept in mind while converting active and passive voices. So in the passive voice, the present participle can be followed by a by plus agent construction. Right? We follow a construction that is by plus agent. For example, they were summoned by an old judge. After by, we are using the agent. They are summoned by an old judge. An old judge is our agent, and by is our construction. Another aspect is that when past participles are used as an adjective, they are followed with different prepositions depending on the participle. So whenever we are working with actives and passives, we will be definitely collided with adjectives as well. An adjective sometimes come with different prepositions ahead them. So what are those? How to use them? This is a very important aspect. For example, I am bored with my studies, but I am committed to it. This is the combination. Bored is the adjective and with is the preposition. Committed is the adjective and to is the preposition. I cannot use bored to. I am bored to my studies. I cannot do that. But I am committed with it. I cannot do that either. I have to use the correct combination with the adjective. So what is the ideal situation to do it? As written in the handout, there is no way to predict the combination. So learners have to memorize the correct adjective plus preposition combination. So we have to, as learners, memorize the correct preposition and adjective combination in order to use. So some of the examples are be accustomed to and be acquainted with. Now I cannot use be accustomed with. I have to use be accustomed to. Now be dedicated to and be disappointed in. So these are the examples that we have to keep in mind. Moving towards the common ELL errors. What are some of the common ELL errors? The first error is the wrong form of verb. ELLs use the wrong form of verb when working with active and passive. So when converting into passive voice, the correct structure is past form of verb to be and past participle of the main verb, right? For example, the teacher graded my paper. This is the active voice. So the passive voice of this sentence would be the paper was graded by my teacher. What we would be using was. Why? Because the above sentence is in the past simple. So when we would be converting into passive voice, we would be converting into past simple. So the form of be would be in past. The answer cannot be the paper is graded by my teacher, because the sentence is in past tense. So the error that the ELL learners do is using the wrong form of verb. We always have to use the right form of verb to do active and passive voices. Another error that the ELLs use is the wrong use of ing and ed. ELLs mostly mix up the use of past participle and present participle. ing is present participle and ed is past participle. For example, I am exhausting in the gym. Is this the correct sentence? No, it is not. It is the wrong sentence. The correct one is I am exhausted in the gym. So we have to keep in mind the use of past participle and present participle. We cannot mix that up. But ELL learners do that. So we have to be cautious on that. The third error that ELLs make is they use the wrong subject. When we are converting a sentence in passive voice, we know it well that the object becomes the subject, right? So if we are using the wrong subject, we would not be able to convert it into the passive voice. We have to always use the correct subject. If I want to say I made the tea, so in passive it would be the tea was made by me. In this sentence, if the active voice is written somewhere and the subject is written wrong, we would not be able to convert it, right? So these are some of the errors that ELL learners make. Now moving towards the other aspect of the presentation, which is English and other languages. So my focused language is Punjabi. Although I am not a native speaker of Punjabi, I speak Urdu, but I have tried to, dig into Punjabi language. So I hope I do justice with it. So over here, I have written some of the sentences in passive voice in English. Then I have converted them into Punjabi. So let's see. The novel was read by mom. This is a passive construction. And the Punjabi version of it is Afsana padhya gaya si maa de zariye. Right? The second sentence is the entire house was painted by Jameel. Sara ghar rang ditta gaya Jameel karke. Third is the students' questions are always answered by the teacher. शागिर्दां दे सवालन दे जवाबात दिते जांदे ने उस्ताद दे ज़रिए. So this is what it looks like to be in Punjabi language. Moving towards the notes and passive voice, like what are the similarities, or can the Punjabi language converted into passive voice, or do we have passive voice in Punjabi language? All these questions would be answered over here. Moving towards the first point, passive voice exists in Punjabi language. As I said in the previous slide, that I have converted the sentences into Punjabi, right? So I was able to convert them into Punjabi, so this automatically means that Punjabi has passive voice. It exists in Punjabi language. We can convert sentences into passive voice in Punjabi language. The second one is it is not formed with the form of be and past participle as in English, right? We are not following the same construction. We are not following the same, I would say the same alignment. The by is represented as zariye. By in English and zariye in Punjabi. Fourth one is agent is used before by. In Punjabi language, the agent is used before by. In English, the agent is used after by. So the structure that this language follows is object plus past participle plus form of be plus agent plus by. Other than English, in English we have object, then we have form of be, then we have past participle, then we have by, and then we have agent. So the construction, the structure is different in Punjabi language. If I move backwards, I would show you an example, and we would just put that example into this structure, right? Afsana padhya gaya si माँ दे जरिए. So this is the object. Sorry, this is the subject, which is अफसाना. पढ़ा गया is the past participle. See is the form of be. Ma is the subject, and zariye is by. De zariye is by. So this is the construction that we follow in Punjabi language, right? Now moving towards the last aspect for our presentation, which is ideas for teaching. Let's say how to teach passive while being active. Being sarcastic. There is nothing passive about learning. The passive voice, and while learning the passive voice, the students need to be as active as ever and fully engulfed in their learning. Right? So it is not that if we are learning passive voice, we can be passive as well. No, we cannot. We have to be active. Right? So moving forward, ideas for teaching according to me are some of these ideas, and then we would be moving towards our activity. How to get students actively engaged in learning something as tedious as passive voice? How can we do that? Yes, with action, of course. Students should be taught by showing them that there is plenty of action involved. The focus is not on the actor, rather whoever or whatever is acted upon. Right? We are not focusing upon the actor. We are not focusing upon the subject, because we know that who is the subject most of the times. We are focusing upon whoever or whatever is acted upon. Right? So my activity is passive voice through active approach. So the activity begins with carrying out an action. You have to stand in front of your class, then you have to drop a pen on the floor, and then you have to ask your students to tell you what just happened. And you will ask them to begin the sentence with your name, which is the teacher's name. And someone should be able to say, Miss Shahida dropped a pen on the floor. Then you have to write it on the board, and you will have to ask the students to identify the subject and the verb in the sentence. And they should say it, that Miss Shahida is the subject and the verb is what? It is dropped. Then you have to repeat the action. When you will be repeating the action, you will be introducing the passive voice. How? You have to drop your pen on the floor one more time. Then you have to tell your students that what just happened. And this time your sentence will begin with the pen. Then you will write on the board, the pen was dropped on the floor. Then you will have to ask your students to identify the subject, and then they would say the pen. And then you would have to identify the verb, and they should say it was dropped. Yes. So this is how you will introduce the passive voice in the class. And then you will explain your students that how we converted an active voice into passive voice and what was the difference, and how the object becomes the subject and the subject becomes the object. Then you have to compare the two sentences. Point out to the first sentence and ask if the subject is doing the action. They should say it is. Make sure they understand that subject is active, the one responsible for carrying out the action. When the subject is responsible for carrying out the action, so it is in active voice. Point to the second sentence and ask if the subject is doing the action. They should say it isn't, because in the passive voice, the subject is not doing the action. So you have to make sure they understand that subject is passive, the one who is being acted upon. So then you have to compare what happens to the verbs. You will ask the students what tense they see in the example. They should recognize the past simple. Show students what happens in the second sentence. The auxiliary verb to be is used in the past tense, which is was with the past participle. In this case, dropped. Then you can also place the passive voice in real life context, right? Which is your discussion, which is your communicative approach, which is your communicative learning, which is the mode of teaching right. So you have to ask the students to brainstorm the type of things that the government does for the population. So this is not for the Pakistani context, of course, because over here our government is doing what we are all seeing. So the government repairs streets, clean monuments, builds house, schools and hospitals, etc. Again, not for Pakistani context. Make sure students see that sometimes when we talk about actions, we are not interested in the actor, either because we know who it is. Over here, we clearly know that government is the one that we are talking about. So we would like to emphasize the results. In other words, what was accomplished. Discussed what things were done in the last year by the local government. Encourage students to use the passive voice. You will ask your students to use what? Yes, the passive voice. For example, streets were repaired, a new hospital was opened, the park benches were painted, trees were planted. These all sentences are in passive voice. We have not emphasized on the subject over here because we likely know that we are talking about the government. I would like you all to excuse the voices in my background because I have tried to sit in the most quiet room of my house because my house is road facing. So I would definitely ask you people to ignore it and I would say sorry for that. And this comes to the end of the presentation. I would like you all to ask any of the questions if you have, any of the queries if you have. I would be open to any of the answers. And thank you for watching.